let's say, with the sexuality and pushing the borders, as you said. But sexuality is quite a common, how to say, subject, and lots of directors can use it, but not as he had pushed that in his films Eyes Wide Shut or in Clockwork Orange. So once he said that he's very self-critic, and he wanted what he does or what he's doing to be perfect as he liked it. If he doesn't like it, then it's not perfect enough. He was always like that in every...
Since I worked with him, he always had to be happy with it. He couldn't make a film for an audience. The audience came second. But this is true for composers, for novelists, for painters. They have to be happy themselves first. And then you can only hope that you get a large portion of the audience. You're lost if you are trying to make something for the audience. You're lost.
What was his love? I mean, what he likes the best? The preparation, the production, the shooting of a film, talking with the artist or with the crew. What was his enjoyable moment?
Preparation. The preparation. I mean, for example, you mentioned Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
He worked on this more or less for 30 years. He bought the rights in 1970 to the novel by Schnitzler, and he finally made it at the end. It's the most difficult film in his life, and he considered it the greatest contribution to the art of filmmaking. It doesn't matter how many people would agree with him or not agree with him. He has no control over this.
Some of my friends, which are really film lovers, they said that this film made Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise very serious actors. First time they saw them really as a serious actors, wherever they have been playing in a big budget films and blockbusters and so on. But working with Stanley Kubrick, it was not easy going job, yeah?
Well, easy is not a relevant term. Tom Cruise told me that he would never experience anything like this again. And both Nicole and Tom loved Kubrick. And when I made my film about Stanley Kubrick later on, I asked Tom whether he would do the narration, because I wanted a big name for this. Yeah? And he said, it will be an honor. Yes, of course. He did it right away. So, and because of respect and love for Stanley Kubrick.
How it's your friendship is, let's say, have been quite long and very faithful, and you know him as a long time. So your sister is his wife, his widow now, unfortunately. And even 15 years after his death, his films are still living like, and we feel them as very, very significant for this moment of living. Or maybe every year, wherever which film we are watching, it's very significant, and it's matter for that moment of living. Did you feel something like that wherever you see his films, even now?
Well, you see, I go back with him much longer. Yeah. It was in 1963. I didn't dream of ever working with him. I wasn't even interested. I lived in New York in my previous profession, which has to do with business planning and organizing. And I told this story just the other day to somebody. That was really the first impression I had of him. He then came back to New York from England with Dr. Strangelove. Wonderful film, yeah? So, and then after that I met him. I met obviously my sister and the children, and we had dinner, and well, this was on all the time. And then came Arthur C. Clarke. He is an astronomer, scientist, and writer of science fiction, and he worked with Stanley on the preparation of a film. It was called The Sentinel. Much later it was called 2001: A Space Odyssey. But in the beginning that title didn't exist. And then I realized what is typical for scientists and for artists. They never stop. They never stop. And it was over dinner, they just carried on. They were fantasy, and they talked about billions of galaxies and billions of stars, numbers which I couldn't deal with. I was a young man. Anyway, I listened, and I thought, astonishing, astonishing. And of course, there must be, even if only one in 100 million planets people can live on, there's life. That means there are thousands of planets where there's life. Anyway, so, okay. I went back to Europe and I lived in Zurich, I got married and I had a baby and what have you. I stayed in touch with Kubrick. He then went back to England. He made this film 2001. And then it was 6 years later when I started with him, thinking, okay, I worked with him for maybe 1 year on Napoleon.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Okay, so now, to jump to what I want to tell you. 15 years ago, I met Arthur C. Clarke again in Sri Lanka. He was still alive. And I said to him, do you remember, it was such an impression for me, 35 years ago, and by now obviously 50 years ago, I observed you talking about the universe and the billions of galaxies and I was so impressed by it and I was thinking about it. To me it sounded like you were telling me there are stars and planets and moons like grains of sand by the sea. And he looked at me with his big eyes and he said, not enough sand. Not enough sand. I never forgot this.
Let's give the audience a stage.